Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor. And Keith, it's a big day. All right, let me tell you why.
Oh my gosh, you took off the headphones. If you're a YouTube watcher, you're getting a special bonus right now.
Go Giants.
Charlie is Go Giants.
Go Giants.
Throws on the Giants hat.
Game 5, deciding game in the NLDS, Giants-Dodgers in San Francisco tonight, 9:30 Eastern time. I'm going to have to stay up until like 1 a.m. to watch this game. And we got Logan Webb on the mound, who shut him down in game 1 of the series, Keith. And look, this is the first time the Giants and the Dodgers have ever played in the postseason. Two best teams in baseball, arguably. And Dodgers get through the wild card game. Giants beat them by a game in the regular series, 107 wins to the Dodgers' 106 wins. And it all comes down to this. And I'm nervous, but I'm excited. And go Giants.
I am not a huge baseball fan who's been following baseball extremely closely, but to my understanding, this playoffs has been an incredible, dramatic affair in the entirety of Major League Baseball, but especially when you have the Giants and the Dodgers, who, in a lot of ways, have been the two best teams in baseball for most of the year.
Yeah, and you know it's interesting. A lot of people have argued that they should not be playing each other in this first round, that they should seed based on record rather than, you know, the standard rules around the wild card playing the 1 seed, because the Dodgers, as the wild card in a very stacked NL West, you know, should arguably be the 2 seed behind the Giants. But
that sounds to me kind of like anti-electoral college sentiment, which always seems to come up when your team loses. So when you're on the bad end of the outcome, suddenly the system is a big problem.
What if Frisbee did this? Instead of having the brackets just you play out normally, right? You have your pool play, you have your pre-quarters, and then you reseed, and the pre-quarter winners, the lowest seed plays the top seed from pool play. Would you approve of this, or do you dislike that? This is what they do in the NFL, in fact.
Right. And you know, I'm sure that reseeding has been proposed at some point. I would dislike it. You know, I think that because we seed at the beginning of the event, and the beginning of the event is not that far away from the end of the event, you know, we've already kind of built in the component of how your pre-tournament performance and station informs where you're going to be in the tournament. So I don't want to reseed in the middle of the tournament necessarily. I get the idea, which is like we want to have the most interesting matchups that create the most fair conclusion to this event. But like I kind of feel like we did, like a lot of that's already built into the format as is. And I like a little bit of the randomness that comes with, you know, so-and-so team slips up on day 1 and now they're in a bad part of the bracket. Like I like that element. I think it adds more fun when there's a little more randomness to how the matchups work down.
When a top seed loses, particularly the 1 seed, then you get an insane quarterfinal.
Yes.
And hey, it's fun. Everybody loves to see like the 1 and 2 seeds playing each other in the quarters. So, exciting stuff. We are 1 week from the national championships. 1 week.
Unreal.
1 week.
Unreal.
We've made it through the season. Like, let's just take a moment to zoom out. You know, there was no Frisbee until June, basically, right? We had no Frisbee. People were maybe playing a little bit of pickup. There was some preseason stuff happening, but like there was no organized Frisbee happening pretty much for, you know, over a year until June of this year. The club season starts in July. And, you know, for all of the drama around the SFI West COVID thing, there is literally no evidence at all that we ever had any transmission of COVID at an Ultimate tournament. Right? Like some people had COVID, breakthrough cases, but none of it was transmitted, which, I mean, I don't really think is a big surprise given our understanding of A, the vaccines, B, the outdoor nature of the sport. So, I mean, there's been a lot of kind of big talk about this, but like ultimately the cases of COVID that we've seen have been incredibly isolated and have really not affected competition in a meaningful way. I'm nervous about nationals, and I've talked about it here on the show that, like, you know, with Ultiworld, like, we have a big team and we have to figure out how to mitigate the risk, not of COVID so much, everyone's vaccinated, but of the operational risk. If somebody gets a case, how do you avoid having too many close contacts that, like, wipe us out from being able to do coverage? And teams are going to be facing the same thing. So, you know, I've talked to some folks. Some people are still doing Airbnbs. A lot of people are doing hotels this year just because it's a lot easier to avoid close contacts by doing hotel rooms.
Which will be a big change. You know, I feel like people place a pretty high value on what the experience that you get from being all together as a team is at nationals. And I think that how teams choose to behave and alter their past, you know, experiences in order to meet the challenges of the time will say a lot about them. You know, what they value, what they think is important. Because I think it would be really easy to go to nationals and kind of like let your guard down or just go back to what we used to.
Sure.
And maybe that's right. Maybe that's the right thing to do for some people. I don't really know. I don't have all the answers or anything. So I do think it's going to be interesting to see how teams behave in this environment, because you could be really cautious, or you could certainly go the other way and try and preserve the traditional experience of nationals.
From a health perspective, I think it's fine. If you want to get a big Airbnb and your team's vaccinated, like, what's the problem? Personal view. I just went to the Knicks Pistons preseason game last night at MSG. I'm in the arena with a bunch of people. It doesn't concern me. I'm sure some people listening to this would be like, wow, that's insane. How could you do that right now? Some people aren't ready to go out and, you know, be in an arena. But, like, I feel confident that my age, my health, vaccination status, that's an acceptable risk for me to take. And so I think, you know, there's going to be that sort of team level risk assessment, personal level risk assessment. And really the risk is not so much health in my view. Again, it's that you're going to lose, you know, 5 of your starters to close contacts if you have a breakthrough case. So it sucks to have to talk about this at all. And we have much more interesting things to talk about, which is the seeding is out, the pools are out, and we get to start thinking about what these matchups are going to look like in pool play as we get ready for the tournament. Hopefully you'll join us for our subscriber bonus segment later as well. We're going to be talking about production, video production. We have quite a team heading out to San Diego this year. We're going to be streaming 2 games every round for the first time ever. We're also going to be filming an additional 2 games every round, 4 games of coverage. We're going to have an on-site editor working to get those filmed games up as quickly as possible. So hopefully, we'll have 8 games on Thursday. I don't know if we'll have all of those games up by the end of the day, but we're going to work to have as many of them up as possible. And this is on top of a pretty significant set of coverage, which we're going to talk about more, the specifics of the production, kind of camera placements, just how to produce Ultimate in our subscriber bonus segment. Ultiworld.com/subscribe. I would be remiss not to mention we are in the midst right now of our 2021 membership drive. So if you're not yet a subscriber, this is a great time to sign up. We're trying to get 400 new subscribers by the end of the month, and you're going to get a lot of content out of it if you sign up now, because we're going to have all of these games coming from the national championships, including, I believe, the third place games, which may matter for world clubs and getting into the World Club Championships. We don't know exactly how many bids there will be, but normally it's 3. So you got to win that game to get in. And so, please go check out the membership drive article, learn about some of the things that we've been doing, what's to come. And, it's really important. It really matters. Like, if you're sharing a password with somebody, like, maybe now's the time to get your own subscription. We get it. It costs money, but this is not Netflix, right? We don't have 75 million subscribers or whatever they have. We have a couple thousand subscribers, and it actually matters every single one of those people signing up and supporting the work that we do, regardless of whether that's because you like to listen to the podcast bonuses, watch video, see our reporting on D3 women's coverage, etc. So we have big plans for the rest of this year and next, and we're working to really expand our streaming capacity, as you can see, with 2 games per round this year, and really just excited to be back doing this again. It's been a really busy couple of months, but it certainly beats the alternative, Keith.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I don't sign the checks, but putting on 2 live streams at a professional level is expensive. And making those live streams free is challenging. We're not going to be broadcasting these on ESPN and have, the 200,000 homes watching or whatever, 2 million homes in some cases, to sell to advertisers or something like that. It's not a network. So it's definitely challenging, and everybody who supports us helps enable us to do the work that we do, and also continue to grow that work and bring more and more Ultimate at a deeper level to the audience.
Absolutely. And so we've got I don't think I can reveal the streaming schedule right yet, but we've got games picked, and we're getting ready to announce that in collaboration with USA Ultimate, who we're working with on this whole thing. Thanks to them for their support, of course. We'll be streaming the games on their YouTube channel and on the Ultiworld YouTube channel. And of course, you can always follow along with all of our coverage during Nationals at ultiworld.com/live. So let's get into it, Keith. The seeding is out. My predictions were okay. It was a tough year to do seeding predictions. And,
sure was.
some choices got made that I think make sense in the context of this year without rankings. Although I do have a bone to pick with a couple of things. First, your initial thoughts on the seeding.
You're right that this was a difficult year, and there were certainly some ones that were very unpredictable. A lack of connectivity, no rankings. We have what we have projected from Cody Mills' site, Frisbee Rankings. So it's like, is USAU going to use this, or will they kind of disavow this entire project and be like, this is not what we're doing? Or maybe they ran the rankings in house and are using that to seed. It's tricky to know exactly how they were going to approach it when so many teams were basically siloed in a bubbles where maybe they played 1 to 2 games against other nationals teams. Difficult year to do seeding.
Really quick, I know for a fact that they did not use rankings or look at frisbeerankings.com. That's at least what was said, and based on the rankings, based on the seedings we see, I think that's true. There were choices I made that were sort of based on unofficial rankings that they clearly did not make and focused more specifically on head-to-head. And so I think it's pretty clear that they didn't use rankings in any way.
Which is difficult because I've been a big proponent that I think USA Ultimate wants to remove as much human element as possible from this so that there's no perception of bias, there's no perception of misjudgment on their part possible. I think that's one of their goals, is to have fair seeding where nobody can come and say, USAU, you messed this up because you misperceived this team and how good they are or whatever. So I think that's why they've been so aggressive about falling back on the rankings. And without that this year, they opened themselves up to some real challenging questions. I also have one bone to pick. I'll be curious if we have the same issue here with the seeding.
Well, you go ahead. What's your bone to pick?
Well, so one of the key turning points, I think, for seeding in general was, what is USA Ultimate going to do with Revolver? You had Revolver, what was it at 9, I think? And they ended up at 6. So the Revolver had this great regular season. Then they lose to Condors in the finals of Southwest Regionals. We weren't sure if they were going to be locked by that regional finish. We knew there's not an official lock. You have to be seated behind teams that you finish behind at regionals. But we thought that could be a key tool for them to use because there's no rankings to go on. However, Revolver not only do they move up, but they are well ahead of Condors. They're 5 spots ahead of Condors. They're the 6th seed, and Condors is the 11th seed. And conversely, you look at Space Heater and Amp, right? Space Heater, great regular season, arguably the best regular season. Loses 1 game at regionals. Their entire season, all they lost was 1 game. They lose 1 game to Amp. And that puts them behind Amp in the mixed division. They're the 6th seed and Amp's the 5 seed. I'm confused how you square those 2 different approaches to where these teams should be seated. To me, Space Heater's regular season resume is better than Revolver's, and I don't get why they are punished more for their fumble at regionals than Revolver was. When I think Revolver's loss was also worse. I think their loss at regionals was worse than Space Heater's loss.
I mean, I said it in my seeding predictions. I felt like this year, because of the lack of rankings, the lack of sort of a normalized schedule of play where people are playing 2 to 3 tournaments over the course of a couple of months, where you have a lot of crossover and you can really get a pretty good sense of what the seeding should be just simply based on the results of the regular season. And you're making only slight adjustments for, what happens at regionals. This year I felt like regionals should basically bind. Now, Revolver was the most difficult case because had they not lost to Condors, they would be the 4 seed, probably.
Something like that, yeah.
4 or 5 seed. And then they lose to Condors, and Condors was kind of penciled in I had them at the 10 seed, and that's basically where they ended up. I mean, they ended up as the 11, but that's only because Revolver was ahead of them, which kind of pushed everybody else down 1 slot. I mean, my big mistake in my men's division seeding predictions was simply the placement of Revolver. And I mentioned that I was curious to see what they would do. I think this gives way, 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 way too much credence to the history of Revolver and not enough to, wait a minute, they got blown out in the regional final. I think they lost by 4.
Yeah.
In Club Ultimate, that is a blowout. That is not a close game. And I think you have to take that into account. And they just left Condors. They didn't give Condors any weight for that win, basically. And they basically did not punish Revolver either. I don't agree. I mean, I just simply don't agree. I think that, this is the kind of thing that would make sense to me more in a year where, Revolver played a full schedule of games and they were really dominant during the regular season and they just have this one fluky loss. But how can you call this fluky? I mean, it's basically their second tournament and, the regular season didn't matter. So you really have to rely on regionals as a way of saying, okay, this is who teams are. So it's just sort of strange to me because it feels like it really just I can understand leaving Condors where they are because they did lose games to teams that are seated in front of them. Simple as that. But why does Revolver get to just basically ignore that loss? Whereas you have other teams that also have really good resumes from the past that, like Pony, that get a 9 seed, even though they look much better. They had improved roster composition, and dominated at regionals. I just feel like it was like they almost overly relied on what happened during this sort of quasi regular season without really doing anything to account for teams that didn't play, like Ring. Ring gets the 3 seed, which I think is correct, but they didn't play. So I don't know. It just strikes me as wrong, basically. I mean, Revolver does not deserve to be the 6th seed after getting blown out in the regional final. They just don't. They're a young team. This is not the Revolver of 5 years ago that was one of the best teams in the country. And I think some of their success at the Pro Championships probably isn't going to be replicated at Nationals, to be perfectly honest. So, I don't know. It's a strange choice. And your point about Space Heater makes a lot of sense to me. It's well, is it because Amp and Space Heater were going to be seated closer together, so it was easier to put them in that order? I mean, to me, that's the right decision, but you should do the same thing with Revolver and Condors.
That's the part that's confusing to me. I don't necessarily think that you can't justify Revolver's ranking. I mean, this is a team.
I agree.
With a good resume on paper. So aside from
the wins
loss,
that they got,
they have good results, and I think that leaning on the results is probably I'm less like thinking that USAU floated revolver on brand name. They have the resume to support being the 6th seed. I'm just confused at why Condors is at 11. Yes, they've lost some games to teams below them. They've also beaten Pony and Sockeye this year. I don't get why Condors, who now has wins over 3 teams seated above them, if you include Revolver, if I'm not mistaken, I don't see why they're the 11. And more so, I really don't see how the same argument can't be applied to AMP that USAU or to Space Heater, that USAU applied to Revolver. I mean, literally, Space Heater lost a single game this whole year. It was to AMP by 2 goals, less than Revolver lost to Condors, who's a lower ranked team than AMP would be. I just don't get how that puts you, in the 6th seed, especially when they have beaten AMP this year as well. So they've even split with AMP and beat them by more when they beat them. Now, it's more relevant that they played a more recent result against AMP. I agree with that. But it doesn't make sense to me to seed Space Heater behind AMP and not apply the same logic you're using for Revolver v Condors.
I have to agree. But it is what it is. And, for the most part, I think one thing to point out, they really relied on head-to-head results. So Parcha in the women's division is a 16 seed. I don't know that feels totally justified based on the quality of their team and the results that they had. When you look at the unofficial rankings, they're much higher. They're like around 10. But they lost to Tabby. And so that was enough to get them the 16th seed. And it's not like they had a bunch of great wins over good teams. They didn't. And the Tabby loss, it's a very logical, given the lack of rankings, to have them in the 16th seed. But I don't, the teams in their pool are probably like, yikes, don't really want to have to deal with them. I don't know that their results really speak to them as some kind of giant killer. But on the other hand, I think that, just based on the roster, based on, what you look at, if you actually look at the rankings, they play really tight with Bent. I think they're a better than a 16 seed.
If this were Parcha's 3rd season, do you think they would be the 16th seed? Same resume, same context. It's just Parcha has existed for 3 years, and they've been like a nationals level team for those years.
I mean, again, I think based on the resume and having the head-to-head loss to Tabby in a year with no rankings, it makes complete sense.
Okay, just checking. Because
I feel like I made a mistake.
I feel like they may be getting a brand new team. They're the only brand new team. They're getting a little bit slighted based on that, and I think that sure I agree with you that they're not going to be giant killers. Like they shouldn't be the 6th seed or something like that. But this is probably one of the scariest 16 seeds I can recall.
Definitely, Erica Bacon, Carolyn Normile. I mean, those are quality of players that you're not typically going to see on 16 seeds.
Yeah, I mean, they could be the 9th or 10th best team in the division.
Very plausible.
Yeah.
That's the kind of team you're like, if you're playing them, you're like, please don't let them hit their stride this week. It's a team. It's like they could their O-line could come out and just be sparkling. Like I could see that. There's no depth, so I don't really know if they have much of a hope to make it deep in the tournament. But I'm curious to see what they look like. So let's take a look into these pools more closely, and let's just talk about the 1 seeds overall. No big surprises. I mean, I guess mixed maybe was a surprise. I actually had Shame as the 1 seed in my predictions, just based on other teams losing at regionals. And that's what ended up happening. Shame gets the 1 seed in the mixed division. And then no surprise, in the men's division, it's Sockeye. And in the women's division, it is Fury. Fury didn't really do anything. They didn't really get any big wins, but they just dominated anytime they played. And, Brute Squad lost and Phoenix took losses. And, did Molly ever lose a game? I don't think they did. But I mean, Fury with the history, they were clearly going to be the 1 seed. They're scary team, and now they get the benefit of playing in Pool A with teams that are well below them.
Molly lost 1 game to Brute Squad.
That's right.
But yeah, I agree with you. I've no issues with these. in the women's division, it's the place where we have the least data, so it makes the most sense to like have a team show up at the series and still win the 1 seed without playing, any teams that are in the top 8. So that makes sense to me. I don't feel like anybody wants to question Fury's bona fides or anything. They look terrifying. So that's justifiable. I think Shane was a great pick for the 1 seed overall, given the struggles of Mixtape and Space Heater in the series. So I'm with the 1 seeds, and I think they're all in a good position to do very well.
Keith, we get a Mixtape Space Heater pool play matchup.
What the heck? These were my favorites to battle for the title, and they still could.
I mean, do you think they're still the favorites?
Still the favorites. No, it's so hard for me to say 2 teams in the same pool are the favorites, but it does mean that odds are that they will end up on opposite ends of the bracket, right? I haven't sat down to do the math, but in my head, 2 teams at the top of the same pool are likely to be on the opposite sides of the same bracket. Is that right?
Assuming that they beat, I mean, that's a nasty pool, man.
It sure is.
They're in a pool with Sprocket and Polar Bears. Like Polar Bears, they're not going to be a great team, but they are maybe the best 4 seed based on what we've seen so far this year.
I would hazard that guess.
So, and then Sprocket is a team that has beaten teams seeded much higher than them. So, we've seen inconsistency from Sprocket, but they're the kind of team that you really don't want to play in pool play. They have the potential to beat Mixtape or Space Heater.
I think I have to back off them being the 2 favorites based on format. One of them is going to play an extra game. I also think that I've maintained that being the 1 seed is a huge advantage. It's very advantageous in pool play. So I think that really boosts Shame's odds of winning a title or reaching the final. So I think it's hard to peg them both as a favorite. Also, I mean, you got to be a little concerned that Mixtapes lost 2 in a row to BFG, right? That can't be a good thing.
And they're currently slated, if everything goes to seed, to play them in semis.
Who's betting BFG if you see that? Who's betting BFG in that situation?
I mean, what more do you need to see? They're beating them when it counts.
I don't know, man. Mixtape is a team that's been pretty good when it counts, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. I think most people are gonna want to pick Mixtape if we get that matchup. But I got to back off them as the 2 favorites, which is crazy. And man, what a costly decision to seed Space Heater at 6.
How about in the women's division? You've got Molly Brown as a 2, Brute Squad as a 3, exactly what we expected to see. And that means, Keith, that they're going to meet in semis if everything goes to seed. Is this Molly Heartbreak round 5, 6? I've lost track.
It certainly could be. Look, this is the best Molly Brown has looked in a while, right? This is when should we be higher on them? Brute Squad has had kind of a rough regular season. Sure, we've seen that before, but not the sterling performance that we expected from them looking at the roster. While Molly Brown has looked great when we had discounted them coming into the year a little bit. So everybody's fortunes are going in a different direction. And if you're Molly Brown, like, you got to think they're feeling extremely confident. Every year it's been like, back to the drawing board. What do we got to do to fix this? Like, maybe they find the right recipe. Maybe Brute Squad's just not as good. I don't know. But there are multiple avenues to Molly Brown finally breaking through.
Valeria's hurt, Keith.
It's true. Do
you think she's going to play?
Ooh, no. I forget. I don't think so.
I thought it was a non-throwing arm injury.
Is that what it is?
I think so.
I thought it was a throwing arm, but I'm not steeped in this.
But yeah, she posted her Instagram. She's got a cast on one of her arms. So we'll have to see what happens. I mean, we've seen players play, but if it's on her non-throwing arm, like, maybe, but I don't know. It's tough to see that. I mean, I don't know that she was like an absolute, critical difference maker on the field for them, but she was clearly an important player, and I was expecting her to be a big piece of their puzzle at nationals. It certainly, thins out the depth a little bit, and I mean, she's just one of the best throwers in the world. So if they don't have her, that's going to hurt a little bit.
I'll be curious to see what Schwa looks like. I mean, Molly Brown's got to get through them first, and they know a thing or two about playing one another. And obviously, we're not going to have Marielle Hammond, but Schwa was pretty roughed up at regionals when they underperformed. So are they going to be healthy? Are they going to be in the right mindset to be that spoiler again, to go out there and play like a team that is a returning semifinalist? Or is there just going to be too much gap between where they were then and where they are now to carry over that energy? I'm very curious about that, because I feel like they could really change the texture of the tournament if they look like a semifinals quality team.
What's your pool of death in the women's division?
You got to go with the letter, right? D for death. The pool of death has got to be D. The way that the pool's set up makes it the most likely that pool D is always going to be the pool of death. Just 4, 5, 9 is always going to be close together. Like those, that's just pretty much always the way it is. It's very rare that the 9 seed is like distant from everybody else. And then on top of that, you get a 16 seed that we think could be as good as the 10 seed. So easily pool D. The 4, 5 seeds are essentially the same. Like it's 4 point. Both of them might as well be the 4.5 seed, right? Like
I don't know. Did you say the teams? Phoenix, Traffic, Nemesis, Parcha?
I did not. Yeah, Phoenix. Yeah, in that order. Not. Phoenix, Traffic, Nemesis, Parcha. Traffic has been extremely impressive in their brief stint in USA Club Ultimate. Is that a fluke, or are they really like a team that could come out here and surprise people? Could they repeat kind of what Sixers did? Like, it's possible. Phoenix has been a team there's been a lot of hype around. Nemesis, always consistent, never an easy out. And then Parcha, a team that we think could really outperform their position. That's just a recipe for the pool of death. I think there's no question. In fact, I think that to me, this is, especially relative to the rest of the division, the hardest pool in any division.
Yeah, that's an interesting. It's the deathiest of the death pools, is what
yes.
You're saying. What was Sixers beat Traffic at the Ultimate Canada Invitational, which is basically nationals in Canada. I think, Traffic's offense struggled a little bit against the Sixers' defense. We know about where Sixers would be. I think if Sixers is playing at full strength in the USAU series, they're a top 3 seed. And so what does that mean about where Traffic is? I don't know. I mean, Phoenix, everybody's dealing with injuries a little bit this year. Phoenix has some players out. And, we know Ann Wirt's out for the year with an ACL. Some other players have been banged up as well. They're starting to get a little bit healthier. I think that's a fascinating game, Phoenix Traffic. And, you really want to win that game, avoid the pre-quarter, and, set up a date with Fury in semis.
I think that this is that pool. Every game is interesting. I just don't know that we know enough about any of the top teams or really the bottom teams, save maybe Nemesis, who what we know is that they're competitive. That to me, that whole pool has interesting games in every round.
So let's go to the mixed division. What's your pool of death?
Pool of death in the mixed division. I feel like you've got to say pool C, even though pool D I think is no cakewalk as usual. But pool C, you get the 2 title contenders, Mixtape and Space Heater. They could still be the best 2 teams in the tournament. Yikes for your pool. And then Sprocket is a very competitive 3 seed. I mean, they may be the best of the 3 seeds, and we think Polar Bears may be the best 4 seed. So if you're going to have basically the best team at every line on your seed, which is possibly the case in Pool C, it's certainly not clear cut, but that is a tough pool to get seeded into.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Mixtape, Space Sprocket, Polar Bears, very tough. I think, Hybrid being over there in Pool D, interesting team. We don't really know how good they're going to be. And, can they be competitive with Dragon Thrust and Amp? That could make that pool interesting. I'm not sure I see Exist doing much from the 16 seed spot, but I think that Hybrid is, they're a bit of a wild card. They're a bit of an unknown. So we'll see if they can make Pool D interesting. And then how about in the men's division? I think I'm going to go with Pool B.
That's where I lean too.
Rarely the pool of death, I feel like. But Truck Stop has really shown to be a tough team this year. Condors is a very good 3 seed. And, I'm not sure the Dig has looked that good this year, but they've shown at Nationals in the past that they can put a scare on teams. I mean, they should have beaten Sockeye last year, or 2 years ago, that is. But I think, Machine, Truck, Condors, Dig, I think that's the best top to bottom pool. I think Pool D also is very interesting. Sub, Chain, Pony, Killjoys. Pony, as a 3 seed is obviously going to make any pool tougher. It sort of feels though like Sub-Zero is a little overinflated at the 4 seed. I actually think that Chain and Sub in the 5 and the 4 spots respectively. And that's what I had in my seeding predictions. I had Chain at the 4 and Sub at the 5, but same difference in the same pool. I just don't know that I feel like Sub is as good as their regular season results have pushed them in the seeding process, but we'll see. Maybe they're better than we think they're going to be.
That is one of those places where I feel like people could say, the media is biased, because I think that our priors on Sub-Zero, what we're used to with Sub-Zero, is going to bias us against thinking that they're this good. So I really have no idea. I mean, my instinct is the same as you, that it's a bit of fool's gold. But what if they're just better than we think? You know what I mean? I feel like it's very easy for us to write them off in most years. But to me, I mean, they may be the worst team in the top half of the men's division. That's what I'm looking at right now, and I think that's possible. Not usually what you'd say about the 4 seed.
I mean, here's the thing. I think you do have to look at history to have some sense of what a team's going to be. And they lose one of their best players in Ryan Osgar this year. And they haven't been, they've been a solid AUDL team with a lot of crossover with the wind chill, but not one of the top 5 teams in the league probably. And so you add all those things up and you've got kind of a weird regular season. I feel like the fact that they got some wins over teams, they beat Chain, respect to them for beating Chain. I just don't know that I necessarily think that they deserve the 4 seed. I think there's multiple teams that I think have had better overall, sort of shown us more than we've seen from Sub. But I'd love to get proven wrong. I mean, they have a lot of exciting young talent, and I mean that's a fun set of matchups there. Sub, Chain, and Pony, and then Killjoys. Ooh. Again, I don't know that they're going to do much from the 16, but they're good. And they're a legitimate team.
They got a chance to live up to the name,
I think they're better than some of the other lower seeded teams. I think they're probably better than Sprout. They might be better than Dig. So we'll see what happens, but we don't want to get too far into stuff. We're obviously going to have our preview show next week, and we'll break everything down, make our picks for semifinals and everything along those lines. But Keith, I guess the one thing I do want to do, what are your games to watch? What are your must-watch games that you feel like are going to define pool play?
Wow. You got to start with Mixtape Space Heater. I mean, at least I have to. I mean, I've spent the whole season touting these as the 2 title contenders, some maybe even a big step away from the rest of the field. And then we get it in pool play. That's got to be the game to watch across any of these divisions. A lot of the 1-2s are very interesting. Obviously the 4-5 in every division is almost always a treat. So Dragon and Amp, you get Phoenix and Traffic. What do we get out of those teams? Sub and Chain, we don't really know at all what to expect, but that could be a game where they're fighting to remain in the bracket, or it could be a game where they're trying to win the pool. And then you get some really great matchups down the line. Ring Revolver. We know so little about both of these teams, really, it feels like. And then you have this matchup with so much history behind it. That, to me, feels
Incredible.
like the most interesting men's division matchup. And then in the women's division, it's tight between Molly Schwa and Phoenix Traffic, but I think I want to see Phoenix Traffic a little bit more.
Molly Schwa would have been much more interesting if they were fully healthy.
Exactly.
It's just as simple as that. For me, it's definitely Phoenix Traffic. That's the game. Some of the other legacy matchups like Brute Riot and Pool Play, 3-4 years ago would have been like, wow, how did this happen? But I don't think Riot's quite the same team. So, we'll still a game to keep an eye on, obviously. But Phoenix Traffic feels like the one that, could set one of those teams towards a semifinal run and the other, having to slog through pre-quarters. So,
all right, I want to know games that don't involve, the top two teams in the pools. What is interesting to you? Matchups from the lower part of the pool.
You mean like 3-4 games, or
no? It could be a 1-3 game, 1-4 game, 2-4 game. Just not the top two teams in the pool going up.
Gotcha. Well, one for me, and I don't really know why. I Lawless Shine.
Interesting.
Yeah. 7 versus the 11, the 2-3 seeds in Pool B. I mean, Arizona, Tennessee, teams that don't typically get represented at nationals.
Interesting.
Obviously, teams new this year. And I feel like there's some star power, there's some explosiveness, there's some fire on these teams. I think it could be like it could be a contentious game, to be honest. I'm excited to see those teams play. And who knows, like, how good is Shine? Like, I think we know that Lawless has the potential to be really good. They've played close games against top teams. They win the Southwest region. That's no easy feat. And Shine, on the other hand, kind of had whatever results until winning the Southeast. But I think the fact that they won the Southeast tells you something about them. And I'm excited to see what happens in that game. I would imagine, based on the crossovers, that winning that game is going to be really important to trying to, get into quarterfinals.
If I'm staying in the same division, Hybrid is a team I'm really interested in. So seeing how they stack up with Amp and Dragon Thrust, I don't know what to make of this team, obviously, since I talked all this trash about them before regionals and then they put it in my face. So they're certainly a team that I have my eye on because I want to see what they can do. Temper is another team. We saw a little bit from them during the regular season that had you thinking like, oh man, maybe this is an up year for Temper. Seeing them against Rhino, I think, is going to be a real litmus test. If Temper's out there and goes out there and beats Rhino, like, that's a kind of a statement game, and that could really, really change the way the bracket's going to look. So I
actually think all of the 2-3 games in men's are very interesting.
Oh yeah,
Rhino Temper, Truck Condors, Revolver Bravo, and Chain Pony. I think of those, Chain Pony is clearly the marquee, where you have, recent national champion versus up-and-coming Atlanta team on the resurgence. And, Pony with question marks, Chain with a big zone defense. Like, it's a tactically interesting game. It's a storyline interesting game. But all those matchups, like, would it surprise you to see the 3 seeds sweep those wins? No. And that never happens. That's super rare.
Actually, it would surprise me to see them sweep. Yeah. I take it back. It would surprise me to see them sweep, but none of their individual wins would surprise me.
Oh, right. I mean, I think Temper is probably a 3.5 point dog to Rhino? 2.5?
Yeah, 3.5 is probably right.
Condors is maybe only a 2-point dog to Truck.
That one's really close.
Bravo is like
3-point dog.
Dead. I think a pick 'em. Honestly, I think
you're high on
Revolver
Bravo.
too much credit.
Or lower on Revolver, one of the two.
A little of both.
Yeah, a little from column A, a little from column B.
And Pony Chain. I mean, do you give Pony points here? I mean, pick 'em, Pony.
That one feels like a pick 'em to me, but the point is that they're all pretty close.
They're all pretty close. Like, it feels to me like there's a pretty big drop off after that. Although I won't be shocked if Lotus beats Rhino and Temper.
Wow. I will be shocked if they beat Rhino and Temper.
I don't know, man. They're good.
They're good.
We'll see.
That's true. But I mean, they've had a really competitive year. I don't know what to expect. I'll be watching the 4 seeds, especially for the game. You gotta find your good 4 seed in the game because it could be.
Tell us about the game, Keith.
Oh, the game! I get to talk about the game on the pod right now.
Yes,
you're not gonna make me wait till next week. All right.
Nope, you got it.
So the game,
let people know because it's going to open soon.
Yeah, it's true. The game is back, folks, and the game club edition because the college and club rules are different. So in the game, you get to pick 5 teams, and from those 5 teams, you get points based on how they perform in the bracket. Now, you do have a requirement, which is that the combined seeds of the 5 teams has to be 36 or higher. So, if you get a 6 seed and a 10 seed, that's 16. So you still got another 20 to go across your other 3 teams. You also cannot have more than 2 teams from any division. So you need to have a 2-2-1 split in the way that you spread it across the divisions. There's a bonus for picking higher than 42 as your total combination of seeds. There are bonus points for that. And then you get more points the further your team gets into the bracket. You get more points for each win. So most total points wins. Really, it's about I think typically the strategy has been like, if you can pick finalists and then whoever the surprise low seeds are, like that seems to be the recipe. But there certainly are other paths to winning, which I think is exciting since we switched up the rules in 2019. We made some changes, and I think we're going to stick with that same rule set for 2021.
I can't wait. I have yet to sit down and really make my picks, but we'll reveal our game picks on our preview show next week.
I love the game.
So we got that going. We're also going to have, I think we're going to have another fantasy game or challenge of some kind.
Multiple. I think we probably are going to bring back the Beat Charlie Challenge.
Beat Charlie Challenge,
where whoever scores higher than Charlie, just in straight up picks, just picking the teams to advance out of pool play and who gets in the bracket. If you beat Charlie in picks, you're eligible to win a prize from the drawing, and if you don't, then Charlie gets to lord it over you. So the Beat Charlie Challenge, and we may have another fantasy game coming too that's a little more player centered. So keep your eyes out. We got the games coming out because we've all learned that it's fun to, sports bet and predict. And now you get to put not your money, but you get to put a little bit of your pride and maybe some prizes where your picks are.
I'm ready because people are going to start hitting up my DMs wanting to make bets with me. It's a tried and true situation, and I might take your bet. So don't hesitate to get in touch.
You did quite well in the Beat Charlie Challenge, in the inaugural Beat Charlie Challenge, if I'm not mistaken.
I think I was like 90th percentile.
Yeah, I mean, you set the bar high. If you guys think Charlie's an amateur, you're wrong.
No. Well, let's see, Keith. Final thoughts as we get ready for the final week of prep here towards nationals. This year, as much as any, like we know so little, right? So that means that we're going to learn a lot at nationals, not only about the teams but about these players. Like this is the year to make your player of the year case at nationals. Do we have kind of like watch lists going? Like, sure, but go out there and fire it up. It's going to be a great year, I think, because we are learning as we go. This is a year full of potential surprises. Check your priors at the door because this one is just like waiting to explode. It's got the lit fuse. Do you think it's more likely we get chalky results or shocking results?
I think it's more likely that we get shocking results. The men's division maybe less so, but even then, like when you look at the top seeds, it's
really,
I don't know, full. Man. I think the men's division is the deepest division, so that like even balances it out. But the other divisions, we just haven't seen as much ultimate. So like, there's just no way that the seeds are right? Like it's just so unlikely to me that the seeding is right and that's going to lead to the chalk. But I'm very curious to figure it out because there's no division where I'm like, oh, there's a clear top 4.
Top 4, I agree. I think I can say there's top threes.
And yeah, but it takes 4 to get to semifinals, Charlie. You can't play semifinals with 3 teams.
I got to sit and really think about my picks. I got to sit and really think about them. So you should think about yours as well. Get ready to enter all of our games and contests. Big prizes on the line. Join us for our subscriber bonus segment. We're talking about live production of Ultimate and what's in store. A little preview for subscribers about what's in store for next week's double streaming per round. Looking forward to it. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week with our Nationals preview show right here on Deep Look. Go Giants.